Hey, good afternoon or morning, wherever you are. This is our 6th episode. Let me take a look at that, of the Beatles surround sound, the lost, missing tapes. And today's are really missing, because I'll tell you what, today, if we're going chronologically, today we would have talked about the missing but truly wonderful surround sound of Hard Day's Night. Now, if anybody has missed, and I'm sure somebody has the earlier episodes, what has happened was, or what did happen, the Beatles in early 2000, the Beatles alive and the estates of John and George said, they were asked by Abbey Road, come in and listen to surround sound. Everybody's doing surround sound. The Moody Blues had released some surround sounds by that time, and they were selling pretty well. They sounded superb. They sounded wonderful. And so they said to the Beatles, come on, man, let us release all of your albums in surround. And unfortunately, there are some Beatles albums that are just not ready or not able to be made into surround sound, and that would be the very earliest ones that were only in 2 channels, or maybe for a few minutes 3 channels, or with luck 4 channels. So the Beatles listened, they sounded horrible, and the Beatles said no, and the tapes all disappeared. But somehow, and no, I don't know how, somebody got a hold of them. And so we're going to listen to him on this show. But today was going to be Hard Day's Night. But the problem is that whoever the people are that got these and got them out of Abbey Road somehow did not get or have not made available to me Hard Day's Night. So that's a shame. Sounds like there's going to be a lot of real good music that we weren't going to be able to listen to today, but it's not the end of the world, because what happened with Hard Day's Night? How did we get our hands on a lot of that music, even if we didn't buy Hard Day's Night? Oh, I know the answer to that one. The answer to that one, and I'm Glenn, I'm your host, your weekly host to this show on the Beatles' lost surround sound tapes. But the reason that it's not a total loss if we don't have Hard Day's Night, and we don't, is that most of the songs were then put out again on something new. And by again, I mean if you bought the album here in the United States, they stuffed it full of garbage instrumentals, like Ringo's theme, this boy, and who wanted that? Nobody wanted that. It was a bunch of crap. So that way they tricked you into buying Hard Day's Night, and then when they put out something new, it had 6 or 7 new songs on it. Well, the good news is that those songs were on Hard Day's Night in England, so you only had to buy one album, and there is no Something New album in England. But the good news is that next week we're going to listen to Something New, which of course is an American album, but in surround sound. And it just, boy, oh boy, does it float your boat. It really is a great sounding album. And when you listen to songs on that where they've just got John's vocal just searing right through the speakers on I'll Cry Instead. It just sounds terrific. And so the format, as we'll get into next week, is the music is in the rear channels in stereo. Good. And the vocals are in the front. And once in a while, they unfortunately bleed them through, so they're in the front, and maybe a right rear or a left rear that unfortunately really ruins the stereo surround sound. The surround sound, not stereo. So that's what we'll be listening to next week. We'll go through it track by track like we always do. The sound quality, I'll let you know in advance. Spoiler alert, is just terrific. And to answer the question that everybody's asking or wants to ask, why can't we buy them? I don't know the answer to that. I really don't know. I think one of the things was they put the kibosh on it when they heard it, and they said, this sounds terrible, and there's no reason for Paul or Ringo to rethink that decision. Neither of them need money, although Paul is hundreds of times more wealthy than Ringo. But Ringo's rich. He's worth about $50 to $60 million. He's got a very nice house in Malibu, in the colony where all the rich movie stars live, like Linda Ronstadt and Barbara Streisand and, I don't know, all sorts of other rich people live in there. So that's where they live. If you want to see what it looks like, it's in the very beginning, in the opening scene of the movie with Elliot Gould. What's the name of that mystery movie? I love that movie. I can't remember it now, but I will remember it. One of my all-time favorite movies. And in it, Elliot Gould's a detective, and he solves the disappearance of his friend who disappears to Mexico, who he drives him to Mexico. Anyway, in the beginning, you see the guy leave the colony, go by the gate, and then later you see Elliot Gould drive up and go into the colony. So you can see what it looks like, but you really don't get a view of the inside of the place. The scene that they film in that movie of the bad guy's house is really the guy who made the movie's house. So they did use his house for the interior scenes of the movie. What is the name of that goddamn movie? I love it. I've seen it 1,000 times. Well, anyway, next week we will be listening to something new, which has 6 or 7 of the songs from Hard Day's Night that were not included on the American version. There's no big deal about Hard Day's Night, the song itself, because that's been released on One, so you can hear it in surround sound already. And the few other songs, like I Should Have Known Better, which I really like. I think that song is underrated. But, John thought it was a piece of junk that he just threw off on the spur of the moment. The thing is that is on Past Masters, which in the U.S. was a double shot. It was a 2 LP set, Past Masters 1 and 2, and then a 2 CD set. But in the setting, or let's just say in the version made by Abbey Road for the Beatles in the hopes of making it a surround sound album or albums, they just compiled the best of both and put it on one disc. And I can just tell you, I'm going to try to find a way so you can hear it. Past Masters in surround sound is just heaven. There's nothing to compare to it. I listened to it last night, which would have been Saturday night, the 15th. And I am telling you, I listened to Slow Down, which was in beautiful surround with the vocals up in the front and the music in stereo in the rear speakers. A complete different between the right and the left speakers, totally different. Some of the background vocals are in the background speakers. Now remember that tells you this thing is real, because there's no other source where you can separate the lead and background vocals. So even if you had the tapes that were going around that were purloined or broken out of the Rock Band Beatles, that one you still had the vocals, lead and background vocals in one track. So you couldn't separate the two. But this volume here that whoever it is that made these at Abbey Road for the Beatles, they did separate. The main vocals are in the front speaker and the background vocals are in the rear speaker. So when we get to Revolver, ooh, man, there's some good news here. Also, I did pick up the Japanese version that is floating around. I don't know what the story is, but they claim that it is in 5.1 or 7.1. I only have 5.1 set up at the moment, so that's all I listen to, and it has got terrifically good sound. I think it's better sound than the one that I've got, which is the DTS version, which of course is lossy. This is claimed not to be lossy. How did these people get their hands on it? I don't know, but not only that, but I am expecting some more Beatles surround sound. Now, maybe not four guys from Liverpool, but maybe one guy from Liverpool who's fantastically wealthy and the cute one. Maybe some of his albums that were never out in surround, to the best of my knowledge. Now, I'm going to mention one thing that I listened to. Well, here's the whole story, and I'll try to make it quick. I have wanted for many years to hear Ram on in surround sound, because that's a very, there's lots of tracks to that. There's lots of different instruments. If somebody took the time and trouble, as long as it was recorded on multi-tracks, which I'm sure it was, they could really make a nice surround sound out of that with vocals everywhere. And I mean, you think to yourself, boy, what would Admiral Halsey sound like with somebody really going to the trouble of doing surround sound? Well, I tried to buy it. I looked here, I looked there. I couldn't buy it. Somebody had it on eBay for $170. I wasn't going to pay that. I looked around everywhere. I tried to find it. I went to the people that got me the Beatles albums that you're listening to with me in surround, and they said, no, we don't have RAM. I went to a couple of record collector sites, and they referred me to Discogs, which is a place that does sell some unusual, questionable sounds, and they had a listing for it. So it did say, oh yeah, here it is. This is RAM. It's 5.1. It's a TOUP production, which us Beatle fans know what that means. It had a great recommendation. It looked like it had 5 stars from everybody who'd heard it. But it said, but there are no copies here for sale. We don't authorize its sale, and we won't be allowing it to be sold here. So basically, you're out of luck. Well, I was very disappointed when I saw that, because it even more whet my appetite. That's with an H, W-H-E-T. Whet my appetite so that I really wanted to hear this thing. Well, this story may sound familiar to you because it's happened twice now. As some of you know, I moved a couple of years ago because I decided to get away from COVID, which I knew was coming and which I believed was going to kill millions of people, which I think I ended up being right on that, didn't I? So one of the things that happened was when I got in here and I started organizing the hard disks from my computer, when I bought a new computer and installed it here and started transferring all of the material, first thing I found were the Beatles albums. And I had forgotten that I had gotten them 10 years ago, and that I had listened to them and said, these sound horrible, and didn't listen to them again. And they had sounded horrible because I had 2 beautiful Magnapans, but I didn't realize these were surround sound recordings. So I'm listening to a surround sound recording on only 2 channels, and my receiver did not have a function to automatically download to that. So I was just hearing half the music, sounded terrible, and I put the tapes away. Well, now I looked at them, and now I knew what it was, and I now, of course, have surround sound like you do. And holy cow, they sounded wonderful. But the point is, so I started looking through, and I found a copy of Ram from all DCC, sound improved, quality, but